The chairman of the House Homeland Security Committee, Republican Michael McCaul, is here with me. Mr. Chairman, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me, Brett.
First of all, the latest. You've been briefed by the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security numerous times. What can you tell us?
Well, he's obviously been under the radar several times. He traveled to Saudi Arabia on 2 occasions to do his pilgrimage in Mecca. Was under investigation at 2 separate times, one for making inflammatory remarks about how his family is related to Al-Qaeda. They opened an investigation, they closed it, and then secondly, I think more disturbingly, is his potential relationship to the most deadly suicide bomber in Syria, who was in the same mosque in Florida, who left Florida to go to Syria and conducted that operation. We have a lot of questions, and we saw the director testify today. I'll be moderating a briefing tomorrow for all House members with the director of the FBI, Secretary of Homeland Security, and National Counterterrorism Center.
What about the father, Siddiqui Mateen? The father has expressed support for the Afghan Taliban. He's had some YouTube videos apparently that were pretty anti-American. What about that connection?
He claims that he was support for the Taliban, for instance. So many flags in this case. The father, the son, I think he radicalized after the divorce from the wife, the travel to Saudi Arabia. Putting this all together after the fact, I think we're going to get the answer as to what happened. I know the FBI has now searched his home. They're looking at his computer records, his cell phone, to see what connections he may have had overseas. I think he probably also radicalized from within the United States. He's American-born. He was watching Al-Awlaki videos, which is that's exactly the same thing the Tamerlan brothers, Tsarnaev brothers did.
And he mentioned them on the 911 call, we're told, the Tsarnaev brothers as his brothers in this fight. Compare or contrast this to San Bernardino. I mean, is it similar?
Well, again, I think you see the flags and warning signs that were there but not discovered prior to the attack. A little different. That involved a black widow coming in from Pakistan. This guy is born in the United States. But in all these cases, whether it be Boston bombing, Chattanooga, San Bernardino, and now this, the deadliest terror attack since 9/11. I think Congress has an oversight responsibility, and we're going to be looking into this to see what happened and what can be learned from this to prevent this in the future.
I wanted you to take a listen to President Obama today and the FBI director talking about this case and this investigation.
We see no clear evidence that he was directed externally. It does appear that at the last minute, he announced allegiance to ISIL.
We are looking for needles in a nationwide haystack, but we're also called upon to figure out which pieces of hay might someday become needles. That is hard work. If we can find a way to do that better, we will.
I mean, to the director's point, you have a lot of people who have some ties, some communication. They're following on Twitter ISIS. They've got some connection. There are 50, you've been on this show saying there are 50 states. There are cases open in all 50 states. Is it a needle in the haystack? How does the intelligence apparatus deal with this?
The director is absolutely right. I mean, we have 1,000 investigations in all 50 states. We get tens of thousands of leads and tips per year, and it's almost impossible to have the resource and the manpower to cover all this stuff. With respect to the president's comments, though, with all due respect, there's always this attempt to downplay the threat, call it homegrown violent extremism, not call it radical Islamist extremism.
And he says he made the announcement and allegiance at the last minute, is what the president said.
And of course, and they never want this to be directed by a foreign terrorist organization. This man claims his allegiance to ISIS, and ISIS themselves, through their spokesman, claim credit for the killings in Orlando.
So when this conversation turns to weapons and guns and the fact that he was under an FBI investigation twice, not once but twice, and still was able to purchase legally these guns the week before, what do you think or say?
The federal courts have ruled that these weapons are legally protected under the Second Amendment. They may go to the Supreme Court, but I would argue that, before the purchase of the weapon, we need to get inside the mind of the terrorists. We need to counter violent extremism in this country. We spend so much money overseas with our military, little prevention in this country to stop the radicalization from within the United States. And I think that's what we need to be focused on.
The Department of Homeland Security has this advisory council, the Homeland Security Advisory Council. And under Secretary Jay Johnson, they've apparently commissioned this report in which we're told the report instructs DHS not to use any language that might be disrespectful to Muslims, including but not limited to the words jihad, sharia, takfir. The report urges DHS officials to reject religiously charged terminology and problematic positioning by using plain meaning American English. What about that?
Well, we've seen this consistently throughout this administration. That is correct. They try to remove from the vernacular in the State Department, Homeland, and DOJ radical Islamist extremism. We have to define the enemy to defeat them. Any military strategist will tell you that.
And when they say, excuse me, Chairman, when they say that only fuels their fire, that only continues to build them up and not cut them down, you disagree?
I disagree because of this. My dad was a World War II veteran. We defeated the Nazis by calling out fascism for what it was. We defeated communism, calling it what it was. We need to define and call out Islamist extremism for what it is and defeat it. If we can't do that, we'll never win this.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the time.
Thank you, Brett.